for children, youth, and their families across Manitoba. Thank you. And at that announcement, Minister Friesen spoke of Premier Pallister's commitment to improving mental health care in this province. And in the past month, we've seen several new mental health funding commitments, including delivering more mental health services directly in schools, expanding walk-in services and trauma counseling at Clinic Community Health Centre and the Laurel Health Centre, and improving access to mental health treatment and support for kids at Children's Hospital. Please join me in congratulating the Premier and his government on these initiatives to improve mental health in Manitoba. So today marks Premier Pallister's 4th State of the Province address since becoming Manitoba's 22nd Premier in 2016. His government remains committed to making Manitoba Canada's most improved province by strengthening the provincial economy and improving outcomes in healthcare and education. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming your Premier, Brian Pallister.
Hi. Oh. Yeah, thanks, Dan. Oh. Look at that. Let's hear it again for Dan and Bell MTS. Thank you. So we're almost 150 years old. That's pretty interesting, eh? Really interesting on Saturday about 5 o'clock over at the legislature. So if you haven't got other plans, Stu, stand up and model your outfit for everybody. This is Stu Murray. Thanks, Stu, for chairing the hardworking committee that's planning the Manitoba 150 celebration. And they're going to have gourmet Tim Hortons hot chocolate, so best to be there. I also wanted to say a special thank you to the Chamber of Commerce. I wouldn't be here today as your Premier if it hadn't been for the opportunities I was given through Chamber of Commerce work to learn about our province, to help, to see how team building works, and to see it effectively change things for the better. And so I had the chance earlier to meet with the board of the Winnipeg Chamber. I thank them. I thank all the Chamber organizations throughout the province for their wonderful work, their volunteer efforts. These are great people that work with the Chamber. If you're not a member of the Chamber of Commerce in your area or in this city, I encourage you to join, and I ask you to thank the Chamber of Commerce for its tremendous work to make our province a better place. As I like to do, I must say also thank you to all the staff here at the Convention Centre. This is a fabulous place, and it wouldn't be fabulous without the people who work here who served that food and prepared it for you. So I'd ask you to also thank them for the great meal today. I'm going to talk to you today about a few things. I first of all know that all of us are who we are because of the experiences we've gained through our lives. For me, the values I learned from my family and the community on our farm southwest of Portersville Prairie, the experiences through sport that I was given, the opportunities that teachers gave me to learn and to grow, not just physically, but in other ways. And the opportunities I learned from the small business people who gave me a chance to work and to support myself in my efforts to get a post-secondary education. My experiences in the private sector, in volunteer work, in the public sector, each of these things have helped me to be who I am. And I draw on these experiences as I do this job, as we all do in our careers, as we all do in our business challenges. But if you had told me 4 years ago I'd be drawing on my mountain biking experience frequently, I'd have laughed and said I doubt it. But I do. I draw on my biking experience. So today I want to use an analogy or metaphor for our challenges as a province by way of a bicycle. Bicycles are designed to go forward. So are we as people. So should our province be. They're designed to tackle challenges, not avoid them. They're designed to not just go down, but go up as well. You ever heard of the penny farthing? Penny farthing bicycle. It was a British invention about 130 years ago. It had a large front wheel like the British penny of the day and a small back wheel like the farthing, hence the name, penny farthing. It's kind of like the government we inherited. It was very, very large on the public sector side, very small on the private sector side. It was very large on the spending side, not as large as it could be on the revenue side. That analogy, I think, works pretty well for what we inherited. The penny farthing bicycle wasn't a great design. In fact, the British phrase you might have heard of that was inspired by that bicycle was taking a header. Yeah, because the thing that bike did best, it was hard to maneuver, hard to steer, hard to balance. The thing it did best was go fast, downhill. It was really good at that. That's where we were going 4 years ago. That's not, ladies and gentlemen, where we're going now. I had the chance to bike a lot in my life. I'm one of 4 people who has biked the entire Trans-Canada Trail across the province. I didn't do it in one day. It's 1,700 kilometers. If you want to get to know this beautiful province, I recommend you bike it. I recommend you enjoy that Trans-Canada Trail. It's a beautiful way to see through not just vision, but to experience in all your senses what we have to offer in this province, and we have so much to offer. And I draw on that experience of not just biking that trail, but many others, as I tell you that I believe that what the most singular accomplishment is of our government so far is redesigning the bike that is Manitoba for a better journey as we move forward. And I'll start by talking about that big front tire, because it was too big. You have to redesign it so it's smaller. It has to be smaller so it can move you towards balance. We're going to be balanced in this province fiscally in 2 years. That's important if you care about sustainability, if you care about long-term sustainability for your social programs too. You have to understand that we can't just keep borrowing $1 billion more every year than we bring in with some of the country's highest taxes and expect that you're going to have a fun journey on that bike. So I'm going to tell you how we fix the finances and how we're going to continue to fix the finances. And I'll start by saying that you all understand, because you're business people or professional people, that culture eats strategy for lunch. So it isn't enough to just say, well, we reduce spending and the size of the public service. That doesn't matter. Then next time government spending goes up and the public service gets bigger and you're no further ahead, right? You've got to change the culture. What I'm going to tell you in respect of making the front tire smaller is going to sound like Harry Potter to most of you. It's going to sound fantastically not fictional, because it's second nature to you to do these things, but it wasn't second nature when we came into government. I'm going to tell you 10 things we've done that you've already done. But it's important for you to know that your government is doing them too. And it's important for you to know that that will make for a better journey for all of us going forward. First of all, we used to have 2 sets of books, a fake set and a real set. Do you do that in your business? I hope not. Revenue Canada might come and see you soon. You can't run business that way, and you shouldn't run government that way. Every other province had amalgamated their books so that you could understand them, so there was transparency there, so you could see what was on those books. We had hundreds of millions of assets overvalued on our books, assets that didn't exist. And we had hundreds of millions of dollars of liabilities that weren't accounted for. The books look better than they were. Now they're going to look the way they are, because liabilities that are real have to be prepared for. And assets that aren't, well, that doesn't make for transparency and accuracy in accounting. Number 2, we follow the dollars. Our estimates process, and by this I mean the Treasury Board process that looks at proposals for spending and revenue generation in government agencies. So this table matters, huh? It was run, before we came in, like a pie. Imagine a pie that's too big, as I said before, with 16 pieces in it, right? All equal. 16 departments of government, all with equal time at Treasury Board. That's how Treasury Board processes worked, badly. And we have one department that's bigger than 7 of those pieces of pie. That's health. Another, education, that's bigger than probably 5. So now we spend the appropriate amount of time evaluating the proposed expenditures based on the dollars spent in those departments, not, I told you you'd think this was fantasy. These are common sense things, aren't they? not just equal, but logically. Material litigation, what does that mean? People want to sue you, and they sue the government to get money from the government. Some of them have justifiable cases, others, I would say, less so. But nobody owned that litigation. Nobody, not one department. There was no central oversight of potential lawsuit outcomes. You've heard in recent weeks of lawsuits to the province having to be settled, tens of millions of dollars. You could also be aware that there's over $1 billion at least waiting to be paid in lawsuits with no big picture grasp on that problem. Now there is. Quarterly reports to Treasury Board, centralized litigation management, and oversight. A proper deep dive to make sure that proper reserves are taken in anticipation of having to pay those bills. 4, capital spending. We had no centralized capital planning tools. There was no 5-year capital plan. There was no comparative capital allocation decision as a consequence of the absence of a plan. There was no process to evaluate how your capital spending would impact on operational capital. None. There is now, and there should be, and there must be. 50% of our debt growth over the past few years is because of capital overspent. Now it's part of the budget process. We spend commensurate time on capital budgeting in our province because it matters. Capital is viewed through the lens on how it impacts on operational spending because we have programs we must maintain and improve. And capital is now reviewed first in our budget process, not last. Using business cases. Not everybody thinks the same. We're all part of what we've been and what we've done. And I mean no disrespect to the civil servants of this province in saying this, but I didn't meet very many people who understood what ROI meant when I came into government. Not too many. ROI matters, and it matters greatly. Nobody in government, in the early weeks of government, demonstrated that they understood that. Now we look at submissions through the lens of return on investment. We look at business case. This is part of our DNA. Preparation for emergencies is pretty important. A fundamental financial plan would tell you that's at the base. That's where you need money because just in case. All right? Just in case you live in the bottom of an ancient glacial lake named Lake Agassiz, you might want to prepare for floods. Huh? Just a thought. We had a rainy day fund. It was close to $1 billion. Under the previous government, it went down to $100 million in sunny days. It is now back up to almost $600 million. That's important. It's important not to have to go cap in hand to a bank right in the middle of a flood or post a fire. Good? These are important things for you to understand because the better prepared your government is, the better prepared you are because it's your money we work with. It doesn't come from unicorns. It comes from working families. It comes from hardworking people, and we respect that. Silos, number 7. There was not a culture of departments working together when we came in, to put it mildly. There was siloism. No business succeeds with siloism prevalent in its business operations. We are looking for ways every day to coordinate our activities. We have cross-departmental committee structures now to generate ideas, to implement ideas, to find savings. Back office services like most major companies, now Canada Life has done this a couple of years ago, of course. Nationally, many other firms have done the same. I mean, there's a thing called a computer now. It works, and it can work to achieve savings on the administrative side that governments are slow to achieve. One thing government is good at doing, according to Donald Savoy, who is a noted academic, studied governments, municipal, federal, international, and provincial for over 40 years. The thing government is good at doing best, growing in size. Silos have no place in a modern business organization. They have no place in a modern government either. If there was a theme song for the previous administration, it would be the old Elvis hit, Love Me Untendered. The marketplace provides savings. We are wholesale shoppers here in Manitoba. We shop smart, and we deserve a government that does too, but we didn't have that before. The Auditor General said the incidence of untendered contracts sole-sourced was an epidemic. It isn't an epidemic anymore. There's more rigorous examination of spending proposals. When departments come in and they say, we'd like to buy something, we ask them how. And if they say they don't want to shop around, we ask them why. We're going to spend the money you give us the way you spend the money you have left after you pay your taxes. Number 9, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia combined have fewer than 20 bargaining units. This is a gathering or coordination of labor to work with the government to coordinate their benefits, wages, etc. To deal with these issues, very few tables exist in the 3 provinces to the west of us. When we came in, there were 180 plus bargaining units in the Winnipeg RHA alone. This made no sense to us. It makes no sense to you, I hope. And the fact of the matter is it doesn't make sense to the people who work in these bargaining units either. Rather be doing the things they trained to do, helping people, caring for people, looking after people, building things, rather than sitting at hundreds of different bargaining units. We've changed that. And we're in the process of changing other things. There are over 60 different definitions of the word night right now. There are over 70 different compassionate leave clauses. There are over 90 different definitions of what constitutes janitorial. These things have to change. Most other provinces are far ahead of us on this. We're playing catch up, but I want you to know we're playing catch up ambitiously. Finally, we've ended the culture of silly. Spend it, lose it. Spend it or lose it was the culture when we came in. It's wrong. My grandmother, who I miss every day, told me a story about going to the portage fair from the McConaughey farm southwest of Portage la Prairie. This was a big deal. This was in the first decade of the 20th century. Her father invited she and her 2 older brothers to go in horse and buggy to the portage fair. This is about a 3-hour journey. They were excited, of course. They pulled into the fairgrounds on the island in Portage la Prairie, if you know the community, still today. That fair is held there. But it was big then. And when they stopped, my great-grandfather reached in his pocket and he handed each of his 3 children a shiny new dime. This was when a dime was a big deal. He said, back here at 4 o'clock. And as they rode home, as families perhaps did more often in those days, they conversed about their day together. And he asked his oldest son, what did you do with your dime, son? And he said, because he loved horses and he had to work with draft horses only. He went to the place where they jumped and where they barrel raced, and he watched, and he used his dime to build a memory that I'm sure he treasured. And the second boy, he asked, what did you do with your dime? He said, I did some rides and I did some games. And he was excited by that too. He asked my grandmother, Jessie, who later became Pallister. He said, what did you do with your dime? And she smiled and reached in her pocket and pulled it out and said, I saved it, Daddy. And he said, give it back. Yeah, that was John McConaughey. She told me that story because it mattered to her. She told it with a gleam in her eye, but she told it with a bit of sadness too. And you should be happy to know that we don't start giving each department and every sub-department exactly what they got the year before, and then add to it every single year, because that's silly. That's silly. We do baseline budgeting that makes sure that the programs we offer are giving value to people. And we begin with that analysis. It's hard work, but it's work you do. And I told you that when I told you these things, you'd be amazed they weren't done before, but I hope you're happy that these things are being done now. It's not enough to have a smaller front tire to make a bicycle work. You have to make sure the tire is pumped up. It's pretty important. Anyone who's tried to ride a flat tire bike knows how hard it is. So we're doing that too. We're doing that by asking people like you for advice, and by listening. This asking and listening thing is also a lot of work, but it's important. We said that we would be bold. We are bold. We are tackling every major portfolio of government at the same time. And I am not doing this alone. I am doing this with the support of Manitobans, the advice of Manitobans, the inspiration of Manitobans, but I could not possibly implement these changes in child and family services, health care, education, which I am particularly excited about in the coming year, and many, many other portfolios of government without an incredible team of elected people who I would ask to stand now and be acknowledged. So who do you ask for help if you have a small business? Well, everybody. It's been my experience to ask for help from everybody. But start with your people who work on the front line. And that's what we did. And we asked for help. And we set up a thing called an Ideas Fund. And its ROI will be approximately what we anticipate over the next about 7 years will be 10 to 1. We asked them to develop business plans. What a radical idea. Well, we trained them on how to develop business plans too, because most of them hadn't had any experience in small business, which you benefit from, many of you. And they came forward with ideas. And as a result of that, and there are dozens and dozens of these projects now underway and more coming with each passing week, we're getting more suggestions. Would you invest in doing this? Because it can make this system work better for us, for our staff, for our clients. Because of frontline workers' ideas, our fleet this year will be 22% smaller. Our fleet vehicle investment will be 22% less than it was 2 years ago. That's enough vehicles to connect from the legislative parking lot, which is impossible to access most of the time, but nonetheless, from there out to Broadway, down to Main, and right to City Hall. All those vehicles you don't own anymore because you didn't need to in the first place. This also saves you over 20% on fuel, which is better for you and better for the environment. Safer workplaces. We asked people who work in our workplaces, what are your best ideas to make sure that we have a harassment-free workplace? And we're acting on that advice, and the workplace is improving, and it needs to improve because suck it up, buttercup is not an anti-harassment policy. And we are making sure that people feel safer in the workplace because that's how they should feel in the workplace. We're leading the country, I am told, in these initiatives, and I expect that others will be following our lead. We have moved to paperless in many aspects. Digitization is a real advantage to us. We've saved 250,000 pieces of paper, I'm told, in the last 3 months, thousands of trees. It's good. Community safety, we've been asking people for ideas. We, of course, most recently with David Asper and the Police Commission report, but as well, community consultations produce ideas. We're excited about that. Our pre-budget consultation involved just in the last 3 years, over 50,000 Manitobans, and I want to thank the Chambers again and other community groups for involving their members in that process. We got great advice. We expect we will continue to. Our K-12 review had over 15,000 Manitobans take part and provide input because we all care about education, about making sure we unlock the doors and give the potential to our children they deserve to have. Rural healthcare transformation, over 300 physicians and clinical experts were involved in the design of our rural healthcare improvements that are being acted on now. The Lake Manitoba Outlet, over 500 interactions with groups, communities, individuals around the basin. These are necessary investments of the time and effort of our staff, of our government people, and I also say of communities to make sure that we have better outcomes on all these projects and many, many more. But I would also say it's not just ground-up advice, it's also expert advice. And Manitoba is blessed to have amazing global expertise in many forms. We've had some criticism because we want to build better, shop smarter, repair our services using the best practices globally. But I don't mind telling you that some things don't cost, they pay. And so we did a P3 review. We tendered it out. KPMG won the contract. The cost of the contract was $287,000. The estimated savings from the learning that we did as a consequence of that review are not $287,000. They were $18,600,000. Some things don't cost, they pay. On the procurement side, PricewaterhouseCoopers won that won that contract. $13 million contract, estimated savings, $200 million over the next 5 years, $50 million per year thereafter. Some things don't cost, they pay. How about KPMG? KPMG won the contract also for health. $700,000 contract, estimated savings, $1.3 billion over the next 3 years. But here's the deal. It isn't just savings in dollars that matters, is it? It's the increase in service capability. What's the WRHA wait time stats for the last 3 years? We're the only province in Canada that has lower waits than 3 years ago. Your province, Manitoba. Because we listened to the experts, we're acting on their advice, and now, well, I'm pleased to tell you that over the last 3 years, Manitobans, how many of you have been to an emergency room? Did you go for fun? 19,669 days less time in emergency rooms. That's 54 years. In the last 3 years, we've spent 54 years as people less in waiting rooms. Isn't that value for money, ladies and gentlemen? Isn't that what you want? That's what we all want. So great, so we got a front tire that works, but we don't have a bicycle yet because there's that back tire part, right? And the back tire is pretty critical. I learned a lot from my little business experience. My business started out of my car in 1980. It was me and good intentions. That was about it. But I invested and I worked hard, like you have as well. And I can tell you that I became reasonably successful in a small sphere. I was, for a decade, one of the top 5 producers in my field of endeavor with Canada's largest insurance company. I traveled to meetings nationally, internationally. I met with experts from around the world. I picked their brains, and they'd ask me where I was from. I'd say Canada. They'd say, whereabouts? Toronto? I'd say no. Montreal? No. Vancouver? No. I'd say, I'm from Manitoba. Where's that? Anybody else had that? When you go to an international meeting, we all have. I was proud to say I was from Manitoba. I am proud to say I'm from Manitoba because you can do anything you want from right here. Anything you want. You can achieve anything you want. We have global leaders here in this room right now, and we need to adapt that attitude because you can't rise above the level of your own self-esteem. You have a business-friendly government. You have a government that is responsive and a government that is responsible, that is creating an environment with less red tape, with lower taxes, while every other province is increasing theirs. You have a government that's ready to listen, a government that's ready to work in partnership with you, a government that is going to continue to do the things that achieve real progress for people. You have a diverse and dynamic economy. You have competitive business costs, the lowest business costs in Central North America, acknowledged for the last 6 years consecutively. You have a clean energy advantage. We don't do coal here. You have a company called Roquette, a French family-owned company that's located in Manitoba to process green peas because we're green here. And we have a competitive attraction here with our greenness, and we should be proud of that. We have a central location, a great location with solid transportation infrastructure, not just rail, road, and with great potential port and air as well, Barry. We have a well-educated, highly skilled, diverse workforce. Main-d'œuvre bien éduquée, hautement compétente et diversifiée. And according to Lonely Planet, we're the best place to visit in Canada. But it's more than that. We're the best place to live, too. And why is that? Because we are the most caring province, because we have a high concentration of people in a smaller area who, when a problem is presented to them, grab it and say, let's find a solution. Because we lead the country in some social challenges means we have an obligation to lead the country in finding the solutions to those social challenges. And this is the province where we have the ability to do that together. And we are the friendliest, the most trustworthy, the most dedicated, the most loyal people in the country that demonstrates those qualities better than anywhere on the planet. That is us. And we have global diversity right here, right in this province, right now. And it is not something that we accept. It is something we embrace. It is something we celebrate, not just at a Human Rights Museum. Thank you, Stu, for all the work you did in getting us that project here and getting it off the ground. Thank you, Stu, very much for that. But not just that. Respect for the rights and freedoms of others, and being willing to stand up and say so when they are threatened. When we have stood proudest as a country, it is when we have done that. When we have stood proudest as a province, it is when we have done that. And we do that here. Whether it's a threat in Quebec presently, which is real and needs to be opposed, because it is an erosion of rights and freedoms when people are restricted in their ability to practice their religious freedoms. That is a Charter of Rights violation and a threat to the well-being of the people of Quebec. But it is a threat also to the well-being of the people of this country. When our reputation globally is threatened by such initiatives, we must stand up, and Manitobans always have, at Vimy Ridge, on the beach at Normandy, in the deserts of Afghanistan, and yes, in the legislature and in the House of Commons, but in everyday actions we take. We do not stand back when other people's rights are threatened. Am I right in this? I took up mountain biking when I was 50 years old. We moved our family when I was elected to the House of Commons. Esther and I made the decision to relocate our children and us together to the capital region, and we decided to live on the Quebec side. It was something we had never done. It was a brand new experience, but we wanted to embrace the diversity of our country, and we thought this was a good way to do it. A friend of mine said, "Pally, you're going to the best mountain biking in the country. You've got to take up mountain biking." So at the age of 50, I took up mountain biking. And 2 broken ribs, a broken collarbone, several bruises, contusions, lacerations, and a near collision with a black bear. Later, I realized I loved mountain biking. It came as a bit of a surprise, but it's exhilarating. It's an incredible activity. I want to say that sometimes I think our greatest challenge is ourselves. I think sometimes we don't realize the potential that exists within us. I think sometimes we sell ourselves too short. But I don't think a bicycle works if there's just 2 good tires. You're in charge of the back tire. We try to help and support you, but I think there's a team there. We're on the front, you're on the back, but somebody has to design the course. And that takes special qualities. It takes special vision. So I want to say thank you to Alex Mann. Alex is a geological engineer. He's a PhD. He has got a passion for the outdoors. He is a person who's used his engineering and his knowledge of environmental engineering and soil mechanics to combine them to become a specialist in designing mountain biking trail networks for Dauphin, Riding Mountain, Sioux Narrows, Nestor Falls. He designed the Summer Games course that was here for our Canada Summer Games at Fort White. This guy received the National Trail Builder of the Year Award in 2017 from Cycling Council of Canada for his work at Fort White. He symbolizes to me what is the best of Manitoba and what we aspire to. He was born here, he got his engineering degree here, he had opportunities to go anywhere in the world, and he stayed here. And he built a rewarding engineering practice in a stimulating field, and he uses his non-working time to make this place better for all of us. And I think that that ingenuity and that innovation and that attitude should be celebrated. So I'm going to ask Alex to stand up. He's with us today, and ask you to acknowledge him. And thank you, Alex, for your work. In 2016, you asked for bold. The Winnipeg Chamber asked for bold. And you got bold. And now you're going to get bolder, because we have a lot of challenges. We have a lot of boulders ahead of us, so we should be bolder in overcoming them. But our Economic Growth Action Plan With your partnership and involvement, we'll break down silos, it'll set goals, it'll provide clear objectives. We'll achieve our 40,000 new jobs over the next 4 years, and we'll do it together. Our plans to reduce inspection time and permitting time are critical. The Capital Region can make that happen by working as a team. 1 day delay in inspection and permitting cost the province $17 million. We can do better. City of Edmonton is doing better. We can do better here too. I'm a little competitive. I think we should beat Edmonton, don't you? Our partnerships with Indigenous communities and individuals, we have to grow those opportunities. Was alluded to early in your comments, dear, and it was dead on. We have opportunities, not just in the north, but in the north, many opportunities. We're already establishing partnerships on prospecting. We have a mineral protocol that First Nations are excited to get involved in that will save time, money, and get more prospecting happening in the north, because there's a Golden Boy faces north, you'll notice, for a reason. There's a lot of opportunity there. There's also opportunity in the lumber industry and forestry. There are opportunities abundant, and we're excited to explore those. I alluded to the K-12 review of our education system. Our education system receives a low rating. That should be a motivation to all of us to make sure it does not in future receive a low rating. There are things we can do to modernize our education system, make it work better. K-12, but also post-secondary. And I know there are educational leaders in this audience today who are excited about that as well. At our universities, at our community colleges, to make sure the linkages to real job opportunities, career opportunities, and career growth are real for our people in our province, so that we make sure our institutions offer the kind of training and the kind of skill development that benefits the people and, of course, benefits our job market simultaneously. We are going to reduce tax on families, seniors, and small business in the coming term. The benefit per taxpayer is $2,020. That's a starting point. It's not as far as I would like to go, but we won't be balanced for the next 2 years, and I want us to get to a position where we're sustainable, not just drop taxes and then later have to see them rise. We have made a commitment to invest $2 billion additional in healthcare. That is a guarantee. That must be done. The population is aging. It is a system that needs to respond. It's a great system once you're in it. Most Manitobans would attest to that. It's the delay in getting into it that is a big part of the problem for many Manitobans. We are going to build 20 new schools over the next decade in this province. We need to. Our kids deserve better than a little storage cabinet to learn in. And our teachers can do more with our students in a better professional school setting. Manitoba Works job plan I mentioned as well. Sustainable healthcare funding, rational regulatory assessment, but also in terms of working with the federal government for change. There are changes that have to happen at the federal level. Some of them happened about an hour ago. Others will happen over the next few years and months. Those changes have to happen. We have a system in our country that is broken when it comes to environmental assessment processes for projects. You could never build a national rail system in our country today with the rules that are there. You couldn't build a national highway system. We can't even build flood projects to help the people around Lake Manitoba get their lives back, because the yardsticks keep moving again and again and again. This is not how you build a country. You need to change the systems respectfully, to give them time frames and to give people who have objections and concerns the genuine opportunity to participate, whether it's on First Nations communities, Métis communities, or non-Indigenous communities. The point is, if you can't even build flood protection for an area where you just finished spending $1 billion and had to move people out of their communities for 6 years, if you can't even build flood protection in that scenario, what else can't you build? We need a better system. The premiers all agree. Of course, the premiers always agree when they want more money out of Ottawa. That's a standard practice. But we do need more of a partnership on healthcare with Ottawa. The federal share of healthcare funding has dropped from around 25% now to about 20% in most provinces. It has to be restored. We need that. We need that support. In terms of barriers to trade, there are real barriers to trade, and trade is uppermost in the minds, I think, of many Canadians, as we've just successfully negotiated NAFTA 2, I call it. The fact of the matter is, trade is what we do here in Manitoba, and we have benefited by growth in trade even through the uncertain times of the last 2 or 3 years of negotiation. But we need to be aware that there are barriers in our own country. Barriers to interprovincial trade are archaic and need to go away, but they won't go away by themselves. And we need partnerships there to make sure. Manitoba will lead the way. We have removed all of our exceptions on procurement, every single one. We do not have any protectionist tendencies here, and we lead by example in helping other provinces do the same. We will continue to do that because we are a trading province and we all here benefit from trade. In the next few days, we'll begin a celebration that will last all year, and that will be of our 150th birthday. Of course, our history is much longer than that, and we'll celebrate that this year too. We will celebrate our past, we'll celebrate the amazing and incredibly diverse contributions of our Indigenous people, of our early settlers, which of course predate the formation of our province by hundreds of years, of the Métis people. We'll celebrate the amazing courage of our pioneers and the people who came here from all over the world to settle, to make their homes. We'll celebrate our veterans who put everything on the line for us and for freedom. And we will celebrate our risk takers and our entrepreneurs and our innovators as well, because they are the leaders that make progress possible. You are the leaders that make progress possible, because that bicycle only works if somebody rides it, if somebody has the courage and the strength and the energy to tackle the hills, to use the easy times, not to coast, but to accelerate so they can tackle the next hill. That makes sure that their heart and their soul are aligned to the task, and that they pursue it, never, ever, ever going backward, because getting off the bike just makes things harder, but forward. We will celebrate in this province together, and we will celebrate with people who have chosen to come here, not just from Calgary, welcome, but also from around the world, who've chosen to come here with hope in their hearts, who've chosen to come here because this is the place to be. This is the place to put your roots. This is the place to build. This is the place to make a life that is better for you and better for those who come after you. This is what we are dedicated to. This home of hope, this Keystone province. The only thing better than today in Manitoba is going to be tomorrow in Manitoba. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Senior Advisor, Public Affairs with CN, Jasdeep Devgan.